What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch Pro and the pulse of the community out there when it comes to what you guys want to see. Now, recently on my community page, I asked you guys about the Nintendo Switch Pro with the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 and what you guys think. And I wanted to go over the results of the poll in addition to some of you guys' answers as well. But before we get into all of that, please make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe if you're someone new. Now let's go ahead and get into this because the Nintendo Switch Pro is such an enigma right now. It seems like it's a real thing. There's been credible leaks and sources that are saying that it's a real thing, but we have nothing from Nintendo. There's still the other side that says no, the Nintendo Switch is doing completely fine. It's doing okay. Games are coming out for it. We don't need anything else. So it's just interesting to see. But based on some of the stuff that I've seen out there from not only my own community, some of these answers that we're going to talk about, but also some of the stuff that I've seen from outside of my community and some of the articles that I've seen and videos, it seems like people are really ready. The pulse of the Nintendo community, Switch fans out there are saying, yeah, like it would be cool if we got something new in order to run games a bit better, or maybe even get some games that wouldn't come before. Now, obviously, that's a whole different thing right there, but let's talk about it a little bit more when it comes to what you guys think. So thank you guys so much to everybody who voted on the polls and who continue to vote on the polls. We have them every single day, and I'm going to try to have them by 4:30 a.m. PT, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, so you guys can vote on the poll, then of course get my videos a few hours later. So I think that's a good 1-2 punch there. Now let's go ahead and first start off with this here, and the question on the community poll was, if Nintendo releases a Nintendo Switch Pro alongside the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, or in the future, would you buy it? Now, there was 3 different answers that you guys can choose from. At the bottom with the least amount, with 16%, it was no, I'm content with my Switch. So 16% of you guys, there was 5.3 thousand people who voted in the poll. So pretty good numbers here for the poll and everything. Now, next up at 33% was maybe it depends on the price. So 33% maybe depends on the price. So that's still pretty good chunk of 5.3 thousand people. And at number 1, which made me even want to make this and also to talk to you guys about it, 51% of you guys out of the 5.3 thousand, 51% says yes, price doesn't matter. So if you combine that, the 51% with the 33%, you have well over 80% of people out of this 5.3 thousand, 80% say that, yeah, like I'm definitely interested or want to buy a revision or a Nintendo Switch Pro. And that is absolutely incredible. Now, I wanted to go over some of you guys' responses as well, because your responses were actually really good. So let's start off with Mr. Matt M here. And he says, considering my Switch is from launch and starting to show its age, I'd gladly pay to upgrade to a Switch Pro. Even if my Switch was new, I'd still get the Switch Pro, because who wouldn't want a better version of the best video game console of all time? So my man Matt definitely rolling out there with the Joy-Con boys and the Switch and everything. And you know what, man? The Switch for me too is definitely fastly rising up there. Already like a top 3 for me, and I think I might have already said in previous stuff that it might be my top or something like that when it comes to best system. But man, Switch is really cool. It's got some great games on there. It's got some cool exclusives. It's got some cool AA, smaller type of games. It's got indie games. It's got the bigger games from Nintendo. Kind of has like the best of like what the 3DS and Wii U offered all put together, and then add on top of that like Japanese support, like with the RPGs like Ys and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely, man. Switch is definitely really cool, and a lot of you guys also like that comment as well. And the next comment that I want to read off here is AFK Gaming. He says, Breath of the Wild would look gorgeous on the Pros. So yeah, I'd have to agree. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild would look really good. And if you look at the Nintendo Switch just in general, a lot of the games do look good. They look fine and everything, especially if you play them in portable mode. But if you dock it and play it on your TV, not necessarily as good like with 4K TVs. Now, they still look good, but it depends from like game to game when it comes to it. Some games can look a bit rough, especially if the resolution is low. So understand what Mr. AFK Gaming is saying here. Now, the next comment here is from Distorted Emerald, who has an awesome name, by the way. And he says, if the Nintendo Switch Pro has a significant difference, like better resolution and frame rates, then yeah. If it's like 3DS, the new Nintendo 3DS, then no. So I want to clarify this, and I think that this is a very good comment because some people want a good upgrade, like a good upgrade that's actually going to make a big difference. The new Nintendo 3DS and 3DS, like that upgrade, it's good. There's a lot of good stuff like with the build quality. There's good stuff like with the super stable 3D with some of them and everything. So I understand that, but when it comes to the actual processing and resolutions and all that, it was pretty much the same. Now, some games could only run on the new Nintendo 3DS, like for example, Xenoblade Chronicles 3D or Fire Emblem Warriors. Those were like new Nintendo 3DS exclusives, but those were few and far in between. And for the most part, they still didn't look like, oh my gosh, it's so much better on the Nintendo 3DS or like the resolutions. It was still that same resolution and everything. They just had to kind of bust it just to get the game to run on the system just in general. So I do feel that people are anticipating or guessing that this would be a significant bump or somewhat significant to where you can play it on a 4K TV and it looks a lot better, to where the frame rates will be cleaned up in some of these games. It doesn't have to be something crazy like a Xbox Series S or Xbox Series X or anything like that. It doesn't have to be like that, or even like a PS4 Pro. I don't think anybody's expecting that. They're just expecting a nice little bump that can get them a bit more. But yeah, if it was a Nintendo 3DS to new Nintendo 3DS, I think people would be less enthusiastic about that type of power jump. But we'd also have to see if that power jump would actually cause a big difference in games or not, if the equivalent of what that was in the Nintendo Switch Pro. So to me, based off of what we've been seeing out there and everything, I think it's going to be a bit more significant than what we saw with the new Nintendo 3DS or something like that. But still a very good comment nonetheless. Now, the next comment comes from Mr. Sam R, and he says, considering that I just bought my Switch last year, that's a big no from me. And you know what? That's a valid thing to talk about here, guys. A lot of people have been snapping up the Nintendo Switch. We just had the Mario Nintendo Switch that just came out, right? We have the Monster Hunter Switch. We have the Animal Crossing Switch that was last year. I mean, we've had all sorts of people just buying Switch up like crazy. And I feel that if the Nintendo Switch Pro came out and you just bought a Switch, maybe you're feeling a little bit burnt on that one. Although Nintendo Switch Pro rumors have been going around for quite some time, but it's kind of hard if you're a Nintendo fan or if you want to play the games to kind of deny the appeal and just wanting to get it. So I do think that there will be some people that would be upset. Back when the new Nintendo 3DS was announced, people were upset because people were buying Nintendo 3DSs. Then all of a sudden, hey, here's this stronger system that could have exclusive games on it, and actually ended up having that. There were videos of people being upset about the new Nintendo 3DS being announced and it being stronger, and they just got a Nintendo 3DS and Nintendo kind of screwed us over and stuff. So I do feel that there would be some people that are burnt on that and they would not want to upgrade at all and just stick with their regular Nintendo Switch and just play certain games. So I think that having the option would be great for gamers. I think at the end of the day, it's like having the option of having a stronger Switch later down the line or having this one that you can just play normally. That would be it. But I think one of the more interesting things is going to be if Nintendo actually changes the price of it. Like, what do they do? Like, how expensive is it or not? Do they replace the current Switch? That's one thing that Nintendo might do. So we're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, I can definitely see why some people would be like, nope, I'm good. I just got a Switch recently. I'm just going to play this. I don't need the best frame rates or resolutions. Just like people said the same thing about the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X. You know, some people were just like, yeah, that's great and all, but I'll just go with my Xbox One S, or I'll just go with my regular PS4 or PS4 Slim. So I can definitely see people doing that as well. Next comment comes from Mr. JT, and he says, yes, if it means games run smoother with more stable performance. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's what the goal would be for this, based off of some of the rumors and leaks that we've gotten. It would be a Switch that just takes a lot of the games that we know and also games in the future and says, okay, instead of this having dipping frame rates of 30 frames per second or whatever the case is, it stabilizes it at that. Or maybe they even do a patch that actually optimizes it and gets the frame rate up to 60 frames for some of the games. Obviously, it wouldn't be something to where it would be like Xbox, you know, Series X, with that's like a next generation system and it just like brute forces the games to run at 60. But I do think that maybe with a nice little upgrade here and there, they can get some games with some optimizations to run a lot better, maybe even at 60 frames per second. But I wouldn't count on that because we didn't see that with PlayStation 4 Pro and also Xbox One X. But I think the resolution thing would be the biggest thing when it comes down to it, because a lot of people have these 4K TVs and some of these games are looking rough on there. So I think DLSS with 4K upscaling, that would be something to where it would look better, and of course performance would be good as well. If you're okay with the performance right now, the 30 frames per second or whatever, it would smooth things out too. Maybe some frame pacing issues would be cleared up. So I think that, yeah, a lot of people, just like this man had to say here, would be excited and ready to go for something like that, considering where the Switch is and how long it's been on the market right now. Now, I do want to read one more comment here, and it comes from Ryan206, and he says, I've been waiting for a Switch Pro for so long. I'll buy whatever the price is. Tired of waiting, especially if there's a Zelda system, pre-ordering the day it's announced. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, how Nintendo can get people to be really on board with this, is just say, hey, we've got a special edition Nintendo Switch Pro Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. And it's going to be able to run Breath of the Wild 2. I mean, there's probably no way it's 60 frames per second. But if they did, let's just say it can get up to 60 frames per second. But even if they didn't, it says, hey, we can run it at stable 30, 1080p, or 4K upscaled. That would be so good for gamers out there. So many Legend of Zelda fans would be like, all right, snap of the finger, they are getting it. They're gonna save up for it, whatever the case is, if they pair it with that big game. So I think that's what Nintendo's going to do. They're gonna leverage their IPs with it. We saw it with the new Nintendo 3DS a bit. We did see some of the different systems that came out that leveraged their IP, like a Legend of Zelda 2DS, I think, new Nintendo 2DS. We saw that a little bit with the Majora's Mask, new Nintendo 3DS, which got me to actually buy another Nintendo 3DS, because I had one already. I had two, I think. I had a new Nintendo 3DS, but then like buying another Majora's Mask new Nintendo 3DS because it looks so cool. So if Nintendo can leverage that IP, especially a big core game like Zelda that so many people are excited for, I think that the Nintendo Switch Pro would be a home run. I think people that are even saying no, I wouldn't buy it, would probably pick it up if it had Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 and a special edition console and everything. I think the problem would be manufacturing enough for everybody to pick up one of those. That might be the issue there. But overall, I think that this is a fantastic discussion. I think that based off of the answers that I'm reading and what I've seen from other people out there, what I've seen from other videos, the pulse of the community says like, hey, we need something new. We want something new. We are ready for some 4K upscaling or DLSS, or some smoother frame rates in our older games, or just we want something new. We want to buy something new from Nintendo. Because we see people snapping up these Mario consoles and the Monster Hunter console and so much other stuff. The Zelda Joy-Cons, people are buying the heck out of that and everything. Those were sold out day one. So people are ready for some new hardware. They're ready to kind of get excited again about it. And I think that it would be a shot in the arm to Nintendo to make sure that they can continue this breakneck pace that they're going at. I think that if you look at everything with the games they got lined up for this year, and we still have more that's not even going to be announced yet, plus what they've already announced for next year with Splatoon 3, in addition to Project Triangle Strategy, I think that Nintendo's going to be set for this year, next year, and even the year after with the Nintendo Switch Pro. I think it's going to prolong the life of the system. Nintendo already stated that they are about halfway through the Nintendo Switch life at this point, and that was last year. So they still got a number of years to go, and the Switch Pro would be a good way to extend the life, just like it extended the life of the Nintendo 3DS, or like the GBA back in the day, the GBA SP, the backlit, screen and everything. That was huge for gaming, for portable gaming and everything. DSi, for example, that was awesome to have a store, more RAM and everything like that, better quality of the screen. So I think that Nintendo is very keen on keeping things rolling smoothly and offering people more options, and of course getting people excited and providing a little bit better experience for people out there as well, like they've done before with their modular or portable systems. But this one's a little bit different. It's hybrid now with the Nintendo Switch, but I do think that Nintendo is keen on trying something like that. But what are you guys' thoughts when it comes to this? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you for the next one. Peace.